Ever wonder why someone with ADHD can spend 6 hours playing a video game but struggles to start a 10-minute homework assignment? At first glance, it looks like laziness, but modern research suggests something very different is happening inside the brain. ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is often misunderstood as a simple lack of attention. In reality, scientists increasingly describe it as a difference in how the brain regulates motivation, reward, and effort. To understand why, we need to talk about dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that plays a key role in the brain's motivation system. It helps the brain decide what is worth paying attention to and what is not. When dopamine activity increases, the brain essentially sends a signal, "This matters, stay focused." But in people with ADHD, this system often works differently. Brain imaging studies have found differences in dopamine activity in several important regions, including the prefrontal cortex and the striatum. These areas are responsible for planning, decision-making, impulse control, and maintaining focus on tasks that may not be immediately rewarding. Importantly, ADHD brains do not simply lack dopamine. The issue is more subtle. The timing and regulation of dopamine signals can be altered. Think of it less like an empty fuel tank and more like a reward system that is harder to activate unless something is stimulating enough. Because of this, tasks that provide immediate feedback and stimulation are much easier for the brain to engage with. Video games are a perfect example. Games constantly deliver rapid rewards, points, sound effects, new levels, visual changes, and challenges that adapt to the player. Each small success produces a quick dopamine response, telling the brain to stay engaged. Homework works very differently. The reward is delayed. The task may be repetitive. Feedback often arrives much later, maybe days afterward when the assignment is graded. For a brain that relies more heavily on immediate reward signals, this delay can make the task surprisingly difficult to begin. This is why many researchers describe ADHD not simply as a deficit of attention, but as a difference in how the brain processes reward and motivation. Another important factor involves executive functions. Executive functions are cognitive processes that allow us to plan, organize, start tasks, and maintain attention over time. These functions depend heavily on the prefrontal cortex, which develops relatively late and often works differently in people with ADHD. When executive control is weaker, starting a task can be much harder than continuing it. But here's the paradox. Many people with ADHD experience something called hyperfocus. Hyperfocus is a state of extremely intense concentration that can occur when a task is novel, challenging, or emotionally engaging. During hyperfocus, a person may lose track of time and ignore distractions completely. So, ADHD is not always a lack of attention. Sometimes it is difficulty regulating where attention goes. And this leads to a fascinating idea that some researchers use to explain ADHD. Most brains can prioritize tasks because they are important, but ADHD brains often prioritize tasks because they are interesting. In other words, attention may be driven more by interest, novelty, challenge, urgency, or emotional engagement. This explains several common experiences. Why deadlines suddenly create motivation. Why boring tasks feel almost impossible to start. Why interesting projects can lead to hours of intense focus. And this difference in motivation can sometimes come with unexpected advantages. Because ADHD brains respond strongly to novelty, many people show high levels of curiosity and idea generation. Studies suggest that some individuals with ADHD demonstrate stronger divergent thinking, the ability to generate multiple creative solutions to a problem. The same traits that make repetitive tasks difficult can also encourage exploration, experimentation, and unconventional thinking. Of course, ADHD is not a superpower. It can create real challenges in school, work, and daily life. But understanding how the ADHD brain works changes the way we think about it. Instead of seeing it only as a deficit of attention, researchers increasingly view it as a different motivational system, one that is highly sensitive to stimulation, novelty, and interest. And when environments are structured to work with that system through clear feedback, shorter tasks, engaging challenges, and meaningful goals, the brain can perform far more effectively. ADHD is not simply about having less attention. It is about a brain that allocates attention according to a different set of signals. And understanding that difference can completely change how we approach learning, productivity, and creativity.